Afternoon. My name is Aliza Abrams-Koenig, and I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement for Yeshiva University. We are so happy that you all joined us this afternoon. This is actually our first official Lunch and Learn of the year. We've been having some wonderful professional networking webinars every Wednesday at the same time. This is our first Torah content-based program, so we're really looking forward to hearing Dean Wasserman speak. We're very appreciative of his willingness to join us today and to speak, and we want everyone to please reach out with ideas or interest in getting involved or attending programs. You can always reach us at alumni@yu.edu. And I just want to ask that, actually, I'll draw your attention to it now, just because I see people are still signing on, so we want to let them all come in before Dean Wasserman speaks. We have two upcoming events that people should please keep an eye out for invitations to, or if they're not getting our emails, please let us know. We have on December 6th, the annual YU Hanukkah Dinner and Convocation, which is a beautiful event. It's a night of 1,000 dinners. We're obviously going to be remote, and we're having hundreds and hundreds, hopefully thousands of people joining us that evening. And then on Hanukkah, on December 15th, we're actually going to be having a virtual wine tasting, which is going to be really wonderful, featuring 3 Israeli wineries. So information is coming out about that. We're really trying to have diverse types of alumni programming. So like we have the professional networking webinars, this Lunch and Learn, and the wine tasting, and many other things coming up. This is obviously a little shout out to the Cy Sim School of Business, and we're really appreciative, again, that all of you are here. And I'm going to turn the floor now to Dean Noam Wasserman. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you so much, Aliyah. Thank you, everyone, for coming to spend your lunch with us. We'll try to mix in, as you're doing lunch, a little bit of learning on a couple of different fronts. It happens to be, when Aliza was asking when it might make sense to go and do this talk, this is essentially the last time that you're probably going to hear anything about Mar Cheshvan this year. We decided to go and do it in the waning hours of the month as we head towards Rosh Chodesh now. And so these seem to be good timing to go and look back on the month, some of the things you might be able to go and take away from it, and also on a lot of the things that have been going on in a lot of our lives for the last few months. And so we're going to go and give a little bit of a different perspective on it, be able to tie together some of the things that in some ways embodies what we tie together within YU, to go and give it a little bit of a graphical high level thing. This is when we're going and talking to the students about things like this. We talk about Torah u business or Torah u entrepreneurship, that we might be able to go and bring together things that aren't usually merged, things that don't usually go and inform each other, but we'll see that there's actually some very deep connections that we can go and see between our Masorah and how it goes and shapes our mindset, and the things that entrepreneurship has gone and figured out now, decades, millennia later, about some of the ways to go and look at the world that we go and see echoes of. But we'll also go and see how we might be able to go and gain something from the entrepreneurial lens that might go and give us some other insights into our Masorah. And so that's what we'll hopefully be able to go and do a bit together as we're going through this path over the next hour. Let me just go and pose a couple of questions from our Masorah right at the top. The first of them, in Yana Diyoma, the other one will be an unexpected in Yana Diyoma, that I'll give a little bit of background on when we come up to it. But as we mentioned, the last waning hours of Cheshvan, we typically go and call it Mar Cheshvan. There's a couple of places in the Gemara where they go and combine it into a single word. There's a bunch of thinking about what is its real name? Is it the combination, or is it Cheshvan that we go and add the descriptor to it? But if we go and think about what makes a month Mar, if you go and think about what are the characteristics that would go and make for a bitter month, think about across the Jewish calendar, all of the other months that we have. Would you go and pick Cheshvan as Mar, or what would you go and pick as the other month on the calendar that you would say probably deserves to be called Mar even more so? Think through what are those other months. Think about which of the other ones might be better going and describing it as Mar. Let's go and use the chat functionality here. Now, why don't you hop over the chat box? Let's go and see what kinds of things emerge in terms of what people were thinking about. Go and pick out one name of a month that we have across the rest of the calendar that might make better sense to go and call that Mar. Okay, Av. People agree, Av? That seems to be the Tammuz or Av, okay. Okay, so it looks like we have Dominantly, the finger on the pulse is looking at Av as being what you might go and call there. Has anyone learned recently? I guess this is where if you fit into this, feel free to go and unmute yourself. You're in a quiet place. Has anyone learned Masechet Tanis or Masechet Baba Basra recently? What did we learn about Av? What does the Gemara tell us about Av? I assume that what you're thinking about there is that we have the darkest day of the Jewish calendar, that we have Tisha B'Av within there, the ultimate morning. We definitely think that that would be Mar. But where's the Gemara in each of those two places go and tell us about Av? Does anyone remember? Something that makes it a lot less of a candidate for being able to go and call it Mar. Okay, I'll go and plug it in for you. That this actually is most deeply in Baba Basra. Kuf Chav talks about how one of the two happiest days of the year is what? One of the two happiest days of the year is Tu B'Av. There we go. You got it, Joe. Yishkoyach. Tu B'Av is actually one of the heights of the Jewish calendar. So within Av, we have the two of those. A lot less depth than we have. Tanis Chavav talks about it also, but in Baba Basra, it goes and talks about the other side of Av that we don't usually think about. We go and lay out like the criteria for what we would go and call a Chodesh Mar. We would go and lay out a couple of things that we go and see with Cheshvan. It doesn't have a holiday, so that would seem to be why we would go and call it Mar. But it also doesn't have a fast day. It doesn't have the downs of what would be a Tisha B'Av or something like that. And so because of that, we would say Cheshvan kind of has half of the things that would lead to it being called Mar, but it doesn't have the other one. So it's missing a holiday, but it doesn't have a fast day or some real day of mourning within it. We had someone else, HB went and suggested Tammuz. Interesting to go and think about Tammuz, not to go and beat up on my own birth month, but Tammuz would actually be, that's a great suggestion because it does have what would seem to be the better criteria for being able to be called Mar. It doesn't have a holiday, and it does have the beginning of the 3 weeks. You have the Shivas Arba Tammuz. That would be a fast day, and so a dark part of Tammuz. And so if we're going to go and call any month Mar, we would think it would be Mar Tammuz rather than Mar Cheshvan. And so we're going to go and pose that question, come back around to it at the end as we go through our journey, as we see a little bit about the mindset of Yiddishkeit, the mindset of entrepreneurship, and be able to go and come back around to this. And we'll see if anyone gets any insights into why actually Cheshvan is the perfect month to be called Mar. And so we're going to go and see that other take on it. Think of it as we're going through this path about what are the things you might be able to go and bring to answering this question about why Cheshvan is Mar. The other more unexpected Inyan Diyoma, this is coming from not the daf, but close to the daf. One thing that I'm doing this cycle is doing double daf. I'm doing, in addition to what everyone else in the world is doing on that day for Daf Yomi, I'm also doing a daf out of the second half of Shas, so that I might be able to go and finish in halftime, because doing that this cycle will actually enable you to do a Siyum Shas right on the 100th anniversary of the founding of Daf Yomi. Heading for Rosh Hashanah in 2023 is the 100th anniversary of the founding of Daf by Rameir Shapiro on Rosh Hashanah 1923. And so that's why I'm trying to do double Daf. Right now, today, this is the Siyum that I'd be making on Baba Metzia. My favorite Daf in Baba Metzia, not to go and pick out favorites or anything like that, but a pretty instrumental one, a central one, happens to be back on Pei Dalet. So I just had it recently in Baba Metzia. And let's go and tell you, by the way, a very easy way to go and remember this daf, very instrumental daf. Pei Dalet is daf backwards. So you'll be able to go and remember hopefully the middle of the Metzias, of the Babas, and being able to go and think on the daf of it with Pei Dalet. This is the daf that talks about the relationship between the most iconic of the chavrusas in the history of the Gemara. Who are the most famous chavrusas that you have? There's another one we can just use a quick chat, or if people want to go and unmute quickly. And who are the most iconic of the chavrusa duos that we have within the Gemara? Anyone come to mind? We have it here on this daf. You see a couple of the names right here. The top line, Rav Shimon ben Lakish, Reish Lakish, and his chavrusa was Rabbi Yochanan. And these were the most iconic across all of Shas of the chavrusas. Got a bunch of other people who are bar plukta, like people who have machlokim with each other and things like that. But of real chavrusas, these are the most important. And what we had was on this daf, we look at how Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish came together. But this is unfortunately the back end of their chavrusa at the end of it. This is when Reish Lakish has died and Rav Yochanan is devastated by it. And Chazal are looking at how can we go and take this Gadol Hador, Rav Yochanan, and be able to dig him out of his depression and also get him back onto track of being the Gadol Hador. Let's go and find another chavrusa for him. And so they went and found another one of the Gedolei Hador, Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer was one of the best out there, and so they figured let's go and put him together, and this will be another magical duo that we can create together. Unfortunately, they didn't work well at all as a chavrusa together. What happened was that when they would go and start learning that Rabbi Yochanan would be hearing from Rabbi Elazar. That's the second of the highlighted things here. Ad Amras Tanya de Masayalach. You're going and bringing proofs. You're bringing supports to everything that I'm going and doing. That's not what I need. I need what Reish Lakish was going and doing to me. What was that? That's the first of the highlighted pieces here. He would go and throw 24 darts at everything I would say. He would go and push back on me. He would go and be against me on everything. And that's what I attribute my magic to, by going and having that kind of a chavrusa. And so we have these very different mindsets of what we go and see of Rabbi Elazar, what he is going and seeing, what a chavrusa should be, versus what Rabbi Yochanan saw the power of with Reish Lakish, what he wants out of a chavrusa. And so what was underlying this divergence between the two of them? That's what we're going to go and also see as we go through this journey. It seems to be a very different question, but we're going to see there's actually this very similar answer that's going to apply both to Mar Cheshvan and also to this magic duo. Baba Metzia, the Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish applied to Rabbi Elazar, and how we can go and see those differences in terms of how they were going and viewing the world. So with those as the two questions we're going to go and plant. Let's go and shift gears into a very different direction. Let's go and take a look at an arena where failure is very common. There's a lot of data that in a lot of other walks of business, there's very little data in entrepreneurship. I have heard, though, has anyone heard that there's a high rate of failure within startups? That's the kind of thing that I seeing some nodding heads that this is pretty well known within startups. If you're going to look at where people fail, this is where we should go and look first. This is where it becomes very much something that is a challenge on almost a daily basis for founders, entrepreneurs to go and recover from failure. And it is an arena where we might be able to go and look to be able to go and see, how do we go and recover from failure? How do we go and take what in Silicon Valley, they talk about making a friend with failure. You go and take the bumps of the road and get stronger from it. That's something that is much easier to say than it is to do. And so let's go and see if we might be able to go and learn something from these entrepreneurs who go and fail. Because unfortunately, what happens when we go and fail as typical humans? What is our natural reflex when we go and hit a bump in the road, when we have a setback? It's very much this kind of a reaction. Very much a woe is me, very much a head down on the keyboard. I can't believe that I went and suffered from that. Very much that the natural reflex is to recoil from failure. And what we will hopefully be able to get a little bit of our arms around is how can we go and learn both from Chazal and also from Silicon Valley, from entrepreneurship, how we can go and be able to make failure into something that we all hear we should go and do, a strengthening exercise, but where we have to go and see some real tachlis ways, some real practical ways that we can go and be able to take this natural reaction, retrain ourselves, and be able to go and turn it into a strengthening exercise. And so to be able to go and do that, we're going to be able to go and see the bringing together between our Masorah and entrepreneurial thinking. To go and do that, we're going to go and tap a little bit of a case study. Now, this is what I would refer to as an entrepreneurial thinker with a golden arm. So there's a bunch of cases in my Founders Dilemmas course that we get into how entrepreneurs, we can go and learn these lessons from them. A lot of those lessons are encapsulated within this mini case study that we're going to go and do right now. This is to go and celebrate. We actually have some LA people, I think, on this call here. Let's go and celebrate a little bit the recent World Series win by taking a look at the Dodgers and one example from long, long ago in Dodgerdom. Does anyone recognize who this is? Okay, this is going a little bit back in time. This is a guy named Tommy John. Has anyone ever heard of Tommy John? Okay, if you've heard of Tommy John, go and chat into it. What is the first word that comes to mind when you hear the name Tommy John? Let's go and see what emerges from that. Surgery. There we go. The same kind of thing that we have when it comes to Chodesh Av and what might be Gamar. Okay, so we have the recurring theme of surgery. Well, we'll have to go and, we got a little bit more. Alicia's a little bit more of a Bucky in the pitching methodology rather than what happened to him when he was on the mound. But hopefully by the end of what we're going through with our mini case and then taking a look at Tommy John through a very different lens, hopefully we'll replace that natural instinct to think Tommy John equals surgery with Tommy John equals the embodiment of Rabbi Akiva and Gamzeh Latova. So that's what we're hopefully going to go through our journey. Let's go and see if we can replace a little bit of that natural inclination that we have to go and think about Tommy John and surgery. Giving you a little bit of the background on Tommy. Tommy was a natural athlete. He was in high school. He was an all-star basketball player who actually could have gone to college on a basketball scholarship. But his true love was baseball. He had gone when he was young, picked up a baseball, and just magic came right out of his arm. He would fling the ball and became an all-star pitcher and was drafted by the Dodgers right out of high school. And so Tommy is rising up very quickly within the minor leagues, makes it to the major leagues. This is what his early record was in terms of how well he was doing. Actually, for a pretty good record in terms of how he was doing as a pitcher, between 9 and 16 wins each season. Not quite the ultimate in terms of like a pitcher being able to go and get to 20 wins in a season, but pretty darn good in terms of how well he was going and doing. This last year that we're going and showing here, the year he was getting 13 wins, that was actually before the All-Star break. In baseball, that's halfway through the season. And so halfway through the season, he was already at 13 wins. How are you feeling right now if you're Tommy? That's, in some ways, you're at the height of the world. Like you are going and you're within striking distance of being able to get to that promised land of the 20-win season. He was having all sorts of ways in which everything was culminating finally for him to be able to go and be able to make it to the top of his profession. And so this is what his mindset was as he's going and taking the mound just before the All-Star break. In the middle of that game, he goes and he just takes the ball as he usually would. He goes and throws this pitch and he tears his arm to shreds. Think about what now is going through your mind. You're walking off the mound. The team doctor is coming and examining you. Dr. Job is telling you that, Tommy, this is pretty devastating. Not only are you not going to go and be able to throw a baseball ever again, but I know that you and your wife are expecting your first child. And Tommy, you're not going to be able to even hold your daughter in this arm. That's how devastating this injury has been to you. And so he's gone all within a split second from the tops of the world to the bottoms, all within that one pitch that he was going and throwing. Think about that mindset, how we would go and react from that major bump in the road, that major setback and that failure. And so this is what Tommy's heading into, the swing for the fences, kind of a surgery that Dr. Job says, hey, we might be able to go give you enough feeling in your arm that you'd be able to go and be able to hold your daughter. Tommy decides to go and take a chance on that. But this is the mindset that he's going into from the top of the world to the bottom, as we're going and seeing how he has gone and dealt with that failure. To go and frame how he went and dealt with it, let's go and hit the pause button on his story. We'll come back around to it, not just go and leave it with a cliffhanger that never ends. Let's go and take a look a little bit from our Masorah, how we might be able to go and frame a little bit of what Tommy was going through. Let's go and step back to, and this is going to be also a little bit tying Daf Yomi into some of the things that we've been going through. This is back, I don't know if anyone remembers where they were on March 3rd. March 3rd of this year, I was at APAC. It was Tuesday morning, and it was when I heard the one line that went and changed the world that has gone and leapt into what we've been going and dealing with since then. I had Dr. Chaim Nissel, who's the Dean of Students at IU, who came and sat down next to me in the big APAC room, all the bodies squished in together to go and hear some very prominent speakers. Chaim sat down next to me and said, Noam, did you hear about what happened at SAR? What was that? That was the first of the schools in the frum world to go and shut down. COVID case, and it went and led to they're having to go and shut down. That is what we've had echoes of since then. That was the warning shot in one line to everything that has come since then. What was going on in the daf that day? I'm not going to expect anyone to remember that beyond my being able to go and dig that out. What was going on in the daf? That was towards the end of Brachos. That was on Brachos Daf Samech that day. How does Brachos Daf Samech end? In some ways, this is Hashem giving us a little bit of a forewarning about what we were going to be heading into, and also the mindset we would have to go and take to COVID. the mindset in which how we would have to go and hopefully turn it into something relatively productive. That morning in the daf, what we were doing was daf samach ends with Rabbi Akiva. It was ending with Rabbi Akiva and one of the most famous stories about the setbacks and the mindset that he would bring to them. Rabbi Akiva was heading towards a town. He was getting to that town just before dark. He was hoping to go and stay in that town, but it didn't have anywhere for him to go and stay. All of the Holiday Inns were taken. None of the Airbnbs were yet there because the web wasn't invented yet. And so he was going to be stranded outside the town, off in a dark meadow. That was what he was going to have to go and be suffering from. This is pretty scary in those days, especially, to go and be outside the town all alone at that point. But Rabbi Akiva had some very fundamental training in the entrepreneurial mindset. He had the training is essentially, if you go and see it as the Gamzu Latova mindset that had been instilled in him by his Rebbe. Who was his Rebbe, or at least one of his Rebbeim? His Rebbe was Nachum Ish Gamzu. It was so fundamental to Nachum Ish Gamzu's makeup that Gamzu Latova became part of his name, that he went and instilled in his Talmidim that when you have a setback, you have to go and see how you can go and stay in the game and be able to go and see how this is going to have that emunah, have that very admirable emunah to go and be able to see how this is going to turn into a Gamzu Latova. And so that story at the end of that daf on Brachos Samach was going and telling us about when he hit that town, he was being stranded outside, how Rabbi Akiva said, this is going to be a Gamzu Latova. He then goes, he pitches camp outside. He then at least has his companion, his trusty donkey that he had brought with him. At least he has a little bit of light, his candle that he's going to be able to go and be able to shine light in the darkness. Dark comes, middle of the night, and unfortunately a wild animal comes and kills his donkey. Closest thing he has to the companionship and the way he was going to be able to go and make his way across the country. How would that feel to us? It would be head down on the keyboard. It would be a woe is me that this has happened to me. Rabbi Akiva comes Latova. Next up, the wind picks up. His candle gets blown out. Again, woe is me. Now it's pitch black where I am, out in the middle of nowhere, all alone. But Rabbi Akiva, Gamzu Latova. And so he's keeping himself in the game, getting himself through the night as he's going and being able to see, how am I going to be able to go and deal with each of these setbacks? Then what happens when he gets to light coming up, sunrise comes, what does he go and see in the town? He takes a look across there. If anyone remembers, you can go and unmute right now in terms of what was the outcome from that? Did it turn into a Gamzu Latova? Does anyone remember what was going on there?
Yeah, bandits pillaged the city.
Great, Chaim remembers the daf. So he looks across there and it had been attacked. There had been a bunch of bandits that came, ransacked the city. And what did Rabbi Akiva say to himself at that point? Now I understand it's Gamzu Latova, because if I had gotten my wish, if I had gotten what I had hoped for, that would have been me. So the admirable emunah that he's able to go and keep himself in there to go and be able to see, stick around until the point that he's going to be able to go and see where is Hashem going to turn us into that. I actually think not to go and chas v'shalom go and be critical of Rabbi Akiva, very admirable emunah, but we're going to go and see how we can actually go and take a much more proactive approach to when there are setbacks, and that's part of what we might be able to go and see from COVID. How we might be able to go and see that also from our Cheshvan. And being able to go and see how by taking, rather than just the reactive, say to yourself, Gamzu Latova, hope this turns into a good, how we can go and be able to seize the reins on being able to go and make it into a good. And that way we become partners with Hashem to go and be able to make it into a Gamzu Latova. And so to go and do that, let's go and encapsulate several of those lessons, as I mentioned, like some of the things that come from entrepreneurship and from several other places in the Chazal. And let's get back into Tommy John's story about what he went and seized on to go and make it into a Gamzu Latova, this major setback from the top of the world to the bottom of it in one pitch. And so he went and seized on, for the aspirational side, two things that we can hopefully relate to. The two things are his faith and his family. And so this is actually very shayach, also very relevant to what we just passed in the Parsha. He goes and he points back to it in his autobiography. He talks about this. He gets one detail wrong on one of the pieces of it, but otherwise, he in some ways turns into a Rebbe pointing to our Masorah. He says that if Hashem could go and take Avraham and Sarah and give them a baby, if Hashem could go and give them a baby when Avraham is 100 and Sarah is 80, that's the one detail he got wrong. He was off by a decade with Sarah. then maybe Hashem can go and do something for me. Let me go and stick around there. Let me go and see what he has in store for me. So he was tapping his bit of emunah that was coming from his being a very frum Christian. And he went and looked back to the Bible for that inspiration. In terms of the other piece of aspirational side, he also looked to that warning that Dr. Job had given him. He aspired to be able to at least get enough function in his arm to be able to go and hold his upcoming daughter. And so this is where he was able to go and put a bit of his energy into being able to not just woe is me, head down on the keyboard and not go and throw himself into going and recovering from it, but where he went and seized and got energy from being able to go and use those two, faith and family, as aspirations for himself. However, to the other downside that he went and seized, not just the aspirational upside, we can go and see some other lessons about how you can go and gain energy and be able to go and use that to be able to go and make it into a Gamzela Tova. We can go and frame this a little bit. Any of boxing fans who are out there, a different sport. Mike Tyson is there on the left. This is also going back a little bit, but what Mike Tyson used to go and bring into the ring and what he attributed a lot of his success to was the chip on his shoulder that he had gone and developed. Mike was very short when he was going and growing up, and people used to go and put him down when he told them that he wanted to be a championship boxer. That turned into a chip on his shoulder of, I'm going to show them. That kind of burning aspiration to go and change the world's picture of you was a bit of what he was going and bringing into the ring, what he went and seized on to be able to go and really throw himself into becoming the best that he could be. That was one other thing that Tommy also was able to go and harness a bit. When he was starting, he was coming back and was starting to get a little bit more feeling in his shoulder. He went to go and visit his old haunts. He went to go and visit Dodger Stadium. He was on the sideline, and he just went and picked up a ball. He was starting to toss it around with one of the old teammates that he used to have there. And as he was going and tossing it around, he heard one of the younger players behind him. And what the younger player was saying to another one was, why is Tommy even trying? There's no way he'll ever be able to go and pitch. Why is he even bothering with this? When Tommy heard that, he got a little bit of the Mike Tyson chip on his shoulder. He was saying, I want to go and show them that I can go and come back from this. I don't know to what extent, whether I'll ever be able to go and hold my daughter or whether I'll be able to go and even throw a real pitch or anything like that. But I'm going to go and show them that I can do something in this. And so that was one piece of what he was going and pulling out of the depths of the emotions that he was going and having fired off by this occurrence that he had. One of the other ones, let me go and frame this a little bit through something that happened within my Founders Alumnus course almost a decade ago. And this is about being in a rut. What Tommy realized was that he had been in a rut when it came to pitching. He had never actually learned how to pitch. He had just picked up that ball, as I mentioned, and started flinging it. And he had never gone and rethought, have I really learned how to pitch? What this came out of, a student of mine a decade ago, was reflecting in her course paper at the end of the semester on a bunch of the things that had happened to her that had been some rude awakenings. There's one in particular that she said was what went and blasted her out of her career path. Essentially a bump in the road that was devastating for her. And she had been on autopilot, she realized. She had been just going down this path. It seemed really easy to just go and continue the way that she was going. And this failure that she had had went and forced her to go and rethink about, is this the right path for me? Should I be going thinking about a different target that I'm shooting him out, a different path that I should be going down? But she went and captured it in a paper that she had written for the course. One line in it, well, I just stared at it for about 10 minutes, thinking about its deeper meaning, reflecting on how it went and how she had turned it into a strengthening exercise, and then went and printed it out and put it up on my wall. That line was, it's easy to get stuck in a rut, especially if you're good at what you do. She realized she had been good enough at what she was doing to just go and continue on for life on that same path that she had been in. But because of that lightning bolt from above, because she had gotten that wake-up call from that failure, that she went and realized, wait, I should be going and rethinking this path that I am on. Maybe there's a better derech that I can go. Maybe there's a different target in life that I should be going and shooting at. And that was why she had decided to go and shift gears, come back to business school, go and think about a different path. And that was what she attributed that failure to, a whole bunch of the ways in which she was thinking very differently about all the things that had happened to her in the past and how she was going and planning that future. For Tommy, he realized, I better go and rebuild myself. I never learned how to pitch. I was in a rut. I'd been able to be good at it. And that's the reason why I never went and questioned it. That's the reason why I never went and stepped back and put up the periscope to look across how I might be going and doing things differently. And so Tommy went and found a teammate of his who is a relief pitcher, who actually had a PhD in kinesiology. This is Mike Marshall. And he said to Mike, can you partner with me? Can you go and teach me how to actually go and pitch? For the first time in my life, teach me not how to go and tear my arm to shreds, but teach me how to be able to go and do it in the right way. And so they went and partnered together and started going and rebuilding Tommy, rebuilding his arm to the point where he could go and get some feeling in it, be able to go and do some functionality, be able to go and really learn how to maybe throw a ball. And so this is what they went and were going and doing together by going and harnessing those four things: the aspirational side of the faith in the family, the downside and the emotions around going and having the chip on his shoulder to gain strength to come back, and also to be able to go and take the re-looking at your path and being able to realize how you have to go and rethink it. When Tommy came back, he went and he was able to get to the point where the Dodgers were willing to go and put him back on the team and be able to give him at least a chance at the mound, be able to go and put him in a mop-up relief situation. Dodgers down by something like a dozen runs or so. Let's go and put Tommy out there to go and have him be able to throw a pitch. Imagine on that day how it would feel to be Tommy, walking out to the mound, that you've at least gotten to that point where you've been able to go and be able to throw a pitch with your arm when you were told that you'll never be able to even hold your daughter in that arm. Think about if you were one of the few fans who had stuck around in a 12-run blowout, as you're going and witnessing the history as Tommy is walking across the grass to get to the mound. Imagine how that would feel, some triumphant for Tommy as he's going out and doing that. What would you think for Tommy? What was to be his aspiration after that? Well, to go and throw a pitch successfully, get it to the catcher. What would you go and aspire to? Think about if he would go and win a game, how much of a comeback that would be. Now think about if Tommy was able to only get to 16 games in a season when he was whole, what would he be able to go and achieve when he was coming back after this devastating injury? Well, this was actually what Tommy was able to go and achieve when he came back after that devastating injury. He actually got 3 times the more than 20 wins, something he hadn't been able to go and accomplish before the surgery. This is the power of being able to go and proactively take a shutfus, a partnership with Hashem, to go and take that major setback and get stronger from it. Be able to go and harness those 4 things, be able to go and take those things that in an actionable way we can go and do whenever we go and hit a bump in the road, whenever we're going and hitting a major failure. Be able to go and take a very different mindset to it than the woe is me, and be able to go and turn it into something that is actually going to be a strengthening exercise rather than a major setback. Tommy actually, after coming back from his surgery, won more than half of his lifetime games. And so this is where if we can go and take a very different mindset, reprogram ourselves to be able to go and get past the woe is me part and be able to go and take that natural reflex and be able to shift gears to a Gamza Tova mindset. That's where we can go and see these actionable ways that Tommy can go and help teach us this. If you go and take a look now at that surgery, that was the reaction that everyone had when they go and hear his name. That's actually now spread to a lot of other types of players. This is Matt Wieters, a catcher for the Baltimore Orioles, who went and had it and attributes a lot of that to what he was able to go and come back, be able to get back into being a star catcher for the Orioles. However, there's one other thing that players point to, not just Tommy and his surgery as being a model for them, but Tommy and his mindset. Tommy and his Gamza Tova mindset as being what goes and has them be able to go and be shooting for the stars even when they've had that devastating injury. And so that's one of the other things that's going to have it be that when we hear Tommy John, that we go and think Gamza Tova itself, that we can go and be able to go and have it be the aspiration that we can go and be able to have that reflex become ours also. Let's go and take a look at this through a modern concept. I assume that there's a bunch of people out there who have heard of the Black Swan. That was the more famous book that was written by this same author. This is the follow-up to it. We're going to go and see a concept that's called anti-fragile, that is in some ways a repackaging of Rabbi Akiva, an updating of Brachos Daf Samech. What anti-fragile is, this took me back when I was just getting to know this concept. It's taking me back to my beginnings as an engineer. We go and think about engineering systems. We usually have a fragile system that is the more typical one. When we go and design a fragile system, what happens when that system hits a bump in the road? When the system hits a bump in the road, it comes crashing down. It essentially is that woe is me kind of a system in the real world. What are we going to aspire to do instead? It might be to Rabbi Akiva's level of Gamzela Tova, that we can go and persist, that we can go and continue through it, and we can go and have confidence that we're going to be able to not come crashing down, but instead be able to continue with it. Anti-fragile is where we go and have the opposite of the fragile system. Not that when you get something that is a bump in the road and you either get weaker or come crashing down, but anti-fragile is where the system has been designed to go and get stronger from the bumps in the road, to go and get stronger from the setbacks. Let's go and see anyone, if you want to go and unmute or if you want to go and throw it into the chat. Can anyone take a couple of seconds now? It's a hard concept to go and grapple with in terms of real world applicability. What would you go and point to as a system that is anti-fragile? Something that we run into on a regular basis, some kind of example you can go and give where you saw something that went and got stronger from having a setback. Anything come to mind that you want to chat? Or muscle development? Oh yeah, Chaim, great. So what would you go and point to? Muscle development. How do we go and develop our muscles? If you want to unmute or you want to chat it to us. Okay, we'll go and give a vivid example of what Chaim is going and talking about here. How do we go and develop our muscles? When we go and work out. And when we're going and working out, what is that doing to our muscles? That's ripping our muscles. That is tearing our muscles. We are damaging our muscles when we go and work out. Why would we go and do that? Does anyone want to go and say, hey, honey, I'm going to go and tear my muscles? Is that going to be something that we want to go and aspire to? Well, why would we go and do that? It's because Hashem went and designed our bodies to be anti-fragile. He designed our muscles to get stronger from going and being torn. And that is how we're able to go and build up that level of musculature that we see in the picture, being able to go and work out and be able to go and have something strengthening come from that. Any other examples from the biological realm or elsewhere that people come up with in terms of how a system gets stronger from a setback? It's actually something that's very shy to COVID, something that we're all aspiring to, something that there was a major announcement last week about.
Antibodies.
Okay, antibodies, great, Joe. So what happens with antibodies? How does the body get attacked but get stronger from that? Joe, can you flesh that out a little bit? Or we can go and give you an image for you about how that happens with that.
When the body senses an invasion, it builds a defense mechanism which fights it, and then those can be used to help other people fight it as well.
Okay, terrific. So we have that our immune system is attacked, and our immune system, as long as it's not attacked in the strongest way, as long as it's attacked in a little bit, that we go and have the immune system get stronger. It learns how to go and fight back, so that when we go and have a real attack, the immune system has been trained for it. You go and think about a vaccine. You go and get a shot. What is that going and doing to our immune system? It's going and attacking our immune system in the small. It's going and training it by going and having a small incident of a setback, so that if we go and get attacked, when we're going and having, hopefully, a COVID vaccine, we're going to get attacked a little bit by COVID in the hopes that our immune system will be much stronger, so that if we get a real attack, that we'll be able to go and fight back against it in ways that we can't do right now. And so that is where Hashem went and designed that body to be able to go, whether it's in the muscles or whether it's within the immune system, to be able to go and get stronger from those kinds of setbacks. And there's several things that we can go and be able to learn from it in terms of how we can go and be able to build anti-fragility into our own lives and be able to go and retrain our natural instinct to be able to become anti-fragile. Just to go and give you a little bit of a taste of how we can go and inject in like this relabeling of it. I don't think they've done yet a Hebrew translation of anti-fragile yet. So I took the liberty of going and designing the cover for them and also giving them what should be the title of that book. Essentially the same concept. Anti-fragile is Gamzela Tova writ large, but how we can go and take a way in which we can see the proactive approach of being able to become the ones who can go and drive it to be a Gamzela Tova. So if we go and take a look, let me go and give another example from a daughter of mine who was in the IDF now just for the last year and a half, went through boot camp, and when we going and talking to her about what she's going on in boot camp, gave me a bit of an appreciation of what they're doing in the Army. When you're in boot camp, you're not fighting a war. You're not going and doing the real thing. What are you doing in a boot camp? You are going and building up your immune system, essentially, figuratively, for when the big attack happens. You're going and practicing a bunch of skills in the small to be able to go and be able to fight a real war when the time comes, and you've gone and prepared yourself in the small. What we have to go and do is find those setbacks in life that can be our boot camp of Gamzela Tova. That can be the way in which we go and practice taking that natural reflex to recoil, and instead of retrain ourselves to be able to go and turn it into something that when we go and practice doing it in the small turns into our mindset, becoming much more like Rabbi Akiva's Nachum Mishkamzu's. And then when a real setback happens, we'll be much better suited to be able to go and turn failure into our friend. And so let me go and give a couple of examples, one out of the school realm. If you go, when you're in school, when you go and get a paper back, and you go, you didn't quite get 100 on the paper. What do we tend to go and look at? We tend to go and celebrate the things we went and got right, and we tend to go and try to bury the things we got wrong. So we go and celebrate and focus on the check marks, and the things that are crossed out, the -1s of that test, are what we try to go and avoid taking a look at. And so if you go and think about how we can go and see this as a microcosm of both what we naturally tend to do and how we have to go and reprogram ourselves, what do you think is my first question that I go and ask my kids when they come back on the rare times, of course, that they don't get 100 on something? What is my first question to them? What did we learn from the things that we didn't get right? I can still go back and remember this back from way in the old days of growing up in LA and competing in the Chidon Tanakh. I remember a question I didn't get right on the regional exam of the Chidon, far more than all the questions that I got right. I back then didn't know who the wife of Yosef was. I didn't know who Osnat was. I have not forgotten it since then because I got that one wrong on it. And that has been living with me far better than the check marks that I had on that test. And so if we can go and be able to learn and get stronger from the X's of life, from the -1s of life, that's where we can go and be able to turn every test in life into something where we're going to learn better. Another one, if you can go and be thinking about, this is an example that came to mind when I was going and driving my kids to school one morning. And Wassermans tend to be of the type who we can't stand to be late for things. We have to be at the airport 3 hours early back when we used to go to the airports. A bunch of other things where we'd go, and the old line with davening very much resonates with me. If you're on time, you're late. And so very much the kind of thing that if we're running to school and it looks like we're going to be late, we're not liking it all. What happens when we're running to school late that morning and we go and hit a red light? Very much not happy in the car there. Fortunately, saw that as an opportunity to possibly go and have that be a little bit of the Gamzela Tova boot camp for us. Decided to go and ask my kids, well, how might this turn into a Gamzela Tova for us? That's where we're going and seeing. The same time we're trying to, that we're recoiling, of going and retraining ourselves and going and thinking a different way about it. And so one of my kids from the back seat said, Abba, did you just see that guy that went and ran that red light? Well, he might have hit us if we had not gone and been stopped by the one that we had here. Going and seeing it, reframing it, having it in a very different mindset of how we're going and doing it. Since then, I've taken to, on my commute, back pre-COVID, I used to come back and forth. I'm actually in Washington Heights right now, but happened to live in Boston, and I would go and drive in each week to Washington Heights. And when I would go and be driving, I'd be putting on shiurim in the car. And I started realizing that what I should go and do, if I'm going to hit traffic, that's going to be making me unhappy as I'm going and trying to get back home in time, sometimes late at night. What I would go and do is save one of my favorite shiurim, often a Rav Aryeh Leibowitz shiur, that I would go and save for the end of the ride, and that I would really only be able to have time to fully listen to if I have gone and hit traffic. Where essentially I'd go and be reframing it for myself of if I hit traffic, great. Now I'll be able to get my full Rav Aryeh Leibowitz shiur done. Or we can go and be able to see ways that we can go and turn that setback into something that will go and reframe for ourselves as being a plus for us. And so go and figure out ways. This is also a way that we can go and frame the Mila of going and seeing how we should go and be taking things in life. When we go and hit the green light in life, it's really easy. And I've started doing it explicitly. When we're running to school, we might be late and we hit the green light. I say, thank you, Hashem. My kids hear me say it out loud. The key thing in life is to when we hit the red light to also be saying, thank you, Hashem. And so go and think about how you can go and find ways in life to go and inject that metaphor into everything we're going and doing so we can go and retrain ourselves in the small to be able to go and be doing that. Let's go and take a look at another arena. Actually, let's go back to our Rav Aryeh Leibowitz. This is actually one of the iconic Jewish founders, Rav Weinberg Zatzal, founder of Eshet Torah. And a little bit of how he went and saw this also, the things that we're going and talking about. Rav Weinberg went and hit a bunch of failure early on in his career when he was trying to do other attempts to be able to go and get things off the ground. And he went and attributed his success with being able to go and found Aish Torah to those setbacks. Failure is not the opposite of success, but it's preconditioned that we see from one of the key role models, Weinberg, Zatzal, who went and embodied that, when we can go and see how he got stronger from it as he went on to be turning into a world-beating founder, went and turned into the founder of Aish Torah. Let's go and now just shift gears briefly to going and putting this mindset, and we're going to come back around to our two shilas that we had at the beginning about Mar Cheshvan and also about Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, to go and see within the interpersonal realm. A lot of this has been within our own minds. If you will, this has been Ben Adam le'atzmo. Let's go and see this a little bit within the Ben Adam le'chavero realm. Get ready also, we're going to tap a little bit if people can go and be thinking back to something we just had in the Parsha recently, to Rashi and how he went and framed something. We go and think about, back in Parshas Bereishis, what we went and saw, the two-word encapsulation that Hashem calls the founding couple of the world. What is that relationship that he went and called for that founding couple of the world? He called that Ezer Kenegdo. Does anyone remember what Rashi says about what Ezer Kenegdo means? What does Rashi tell us about Ezer Kenegdo? Anyone want to unmute? Joe?
If it's a good relationship, it's Ezer.
It's
It's a
connect.
bad relationship, it's Kenegdo.
Okay, so if you are Zoche, it's an Ezer. If you're not Zoche, then it's a Kenegdo. What does that tell us about how Rashi goes and views failure? When you go and get a Kenegdo, you get a negative consequence of something that you did. That's actually a failure on your part. You were not Zoche to get something better. You were not Zoche to go and get that Kenegdo. If we go and complement that, we can go and see a very different perspective on it. And this is when I was giving a talk at EULA about 2 or 3 years ago, and Rav Sauer was in that crowd. He was the one who went and pointed it out to me about how this actually is in Chazal. I was talking about it from an entrepreneurial perspective, but about how we have to go and reframe that failure as a plus for us. And what Rav Sauer said was that the Netziv, Naftali Yehuda Berlin, Zatzal was Gadol of the 19th century, the Rosh Yeshiva of the Voloshin Yeshiva. What he said was that entrepreneurial perspective, when we go and see Ezer Kenegdo, what the Netziv said is that it is the Kenegdo, it is the pushback in our interpersonal relationships that is the Ezer. That is the invaluable thing that someone is doing for us, that goes and helps us see a failure, see something that we were not realizing we were doing wrong. And if they can go and put that on our radar and help us see how we should go and get stronger from it, that is the real Ezer that we are going and being able to do. And so if you go and see in a lot of ways what we've been going and talking about, Rashi is in some ways that natural reflex. He is the descriptive of how humans have that natural recoil, that if we have a setback, we are not zoche to do it, as Joe is going and seeing. We're not zoche to get better. But the Netziv is in some ways the prescriptive that we're talking about here, about how we have to go and find the Kenegdo that enables us to go and get stronger, and that is the Netziv. So if we go now and get back into the entrepreneurship realm, this is a blog that one of my students from HBS had gone and done. Taking a lot of this, I would talk early on in the course, my course, about Ezer Kenegdo as that model for founding teams, and how we have to go and be able to see the Kenegdo as being what we have to go and foster. And she talked about in this blog post how co-founders have to learn how to go and fight well. That you have to go and be able to have a good battle in order to be able to go and raise each other to higher heights, as you're going and being able to go and see how it's not a setback when your co-founder goes and criticizes you. That you have to go and build the fighting muscle together well. And so that's one way she was going and framing it for entrepreneurship. To go and take it into another realm, it's from the realm of psychology and the research on teams. I don't know if we have any musicians out there in the audience, but there's research on orchestras and how well they go and play. How good is the music that they go and make together? Now, I leave to my wife the expertise when it comes to music. My wife is a violinist, and she's fortunately passed that down to my kids. I'm very much more an amateur when it comes to that. My expectation would have been that when you're going and taking a look at orchestras, that the ones who get along well versus the ones who actually have a little bit of conflict within them, that the ones who play well are going to make better music. What it turns out, and this research that was done on those orchestras finds that what they called grumpy orchestras actually play better. The ones who can go and be able to have a little bit of a battle, a little bit of a fight, be able to be the Kenegdo rather than just the Ezer, are actually the ones who are able to go and rise to greater heights, to be able to go and play more beautiful music together, literally. And so this is where we can go and see a little bit of the echoes within the modern research around Ezer Kenegdo. Another one of them that we can go and see is an example that leapt out of me, this visually, coming from a very different realm, but going back to the bodybuilding example that we had about being able to go and get stronger from it, that Chaim went and highlighted for us. These are two twins, the Harrison twins, who rose to become champion bodybuilders. And one of them was quoted in the article that I was looking at as going and attributing it to the fact that he was a twin and that they go and really push each other, as we see visually here, to go to greater heights. It was the Kenegdo and what they were going and doing that is the reason they were able to go and get to that point, that they were able to go and become at the top of their profession. And is there anything, let's go and see, unmuting or into chatting, anything that you can go and see in our Masorah, how we go and be able to go and have that same thing pushing each other, to be able to go and get stronger from that Kenegdo interaction. Anything come to mind? Some things that some of us, Chavruta, great. So Chaim, thank you again. You're a ringer. I should go take you and Joe to all the talks that I go and give on this. Chaim's pointed to Chavrusa in the base medrash, of how we've built it into the fabric of how we go and learn to go and push each other to the greater heights. It's not, and so this is interesting. When I came to YU, one of the faculty members, non-Jewish, mentioned that when they had been a new faculty member, they had been taken on a tour of the campus and had been taken also to the base medrash, the Gluck base medrash. When they were outside the base medrash, it was framed to them as that this is the library. Yeah, and then they're walking into the library and they don't see library. What this faculty member was saying was, I was expecting quiet. What do you go and see when you head into a base medrash with all the chavrusas going? Major buzz, you have chavrusas going at each other, arguing. They were saying, there's not at all as I was going and expecting. And he came to appreciate the Kenegdo element of chavrusas, of how going and pushing each other, that's how we learn better. Chazal go and tell us that one person learning alone is a mistake unless you can't avoid it, that going and having a chavrusa is the best way to be able to go and raise yourself to greater heights. And so we can go and see within our Masorah all sorts of ways that we build that into how we can go and have that best practice become part of our daily routine. And we can go and retrain that recoil muscle that we have and that reflex. That's how we can go and build it into our everyday lives of every minute as we're living, going and seeing it as opportunities to be able to go and get stronger from it. We can go and see now, what are these two models that we saw back on Pei Daled? What do those go and have echoes for us? Well, first, what was the embodiment that we had, Ad Amres Tani de Messiah Lach? What was Rabbi Lazar going and doing in terms of how he approached that chavrusa? Who was he embodying when we were going and taking like at Rashi versus the Netziv? He was going embodying what Rashi was saying, that we have to be the Ezer and we should not be doing the Kenegdo because it means that we were in Zocha to get something better, to go and get the Ezer. So in a lot of ways, Rabbi Elazar and his style was going and embodying Rashi in that. When it comes to the other one that Reish Lakish was going and throwing the 24 darts and what Rabbi Yochanan had seen the power of, what was he going and embodying? He was embodying the Netziv. That is going to come from the magic of the pushback in the chavrusa, and that's what enabled us to go and rise to the greater heights. So if we go now and take this and go and take a look and bring this into our personal lives in a very different way, we can go and revisit the Ezer Kenegdo in the way that we can go and see that founding couple of the world has echoes when we go and found our families, when we go and have our founding partner of the world. A lot of times when we go and have pushback early on, I don't know how many newlyweds we have there, Shana Rishona. A lot of times we are going and we're at fisticuffs with our partner. We go and have all sorts of ways that we're having to work through and build those fighting muscles, build those muscles that my Jessica Alter, my alum, had gone and highlighted for founding teams. This is one of the critical ways that we have to go and reframe that pushback as being a helping hand, as being ways that it's going to be able to go and rise to a greater, there was actually a shir that I was just listening to, Rav Schnall from YU. He had done a shir on growing through marriage. In a lot of ways, this is what we have to go and aspire to be able to go and see the Kenegdo as it's going to be a growth opportunity, not that we go and recoil and be able to go and have bumps in the road rather than turning Rishona Rishona into growing through marriage. And so that's where we can go and focus on that Kenegdo being something we appreciate a lot more than what we usually would be. So let's go and unmute ourselves now a little bit to go and see, anyone get any insights from this path into why we might be able to go and say that Cheshvan, with not having holidays, but also not having any fasts or anything to the downside, why actually are applying Mar to this month that we were just wrapping up now, why that is actually the perfect way to go and refer to this month. How would we go and think about it now from the lens that we went and took over the last 55 minutes? Anyone have any insights about why it is actually a perfect example why Tammuz would not be the right one to be calling Mar, and instead that Cheshvan should really be the Mar month? Any insights chatted or live on this? If we go and think about when we went and we hit Tammuz, when we go and hit Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, if we go and take it right, what does that do to us? We go and reflect more deeply what caused the Churban. How can we go? So Chaim, thank you again. No external impetus on the calendar. Alicia, terrific. Even bad is better than nothing. Chaim is taking that even to a higher level. The external impetus to push us to grow. It's not just that bad is better than nothing, but bad should be turning into a growth opportunity. In Tammuz, if we go and take that warning shot that Hashem is giving us of having that fast in the right way, we get stronger in our practices. We get stronger in our Yiddishkeit. Cheshvan, it doesn't have the heights of a holiday to go and have us get stronger. It also doesn't have the depths of a Shiva Asar B'Tammuz or other ways that we are forced to go and be thinking differently about how we are acting, our Masorah, and how we can go and strengthen it. And so in this month that we just finished and in the echoes that we have of it throughout the rest of the year, we had to go and work a lot harder to be able to go and get stronger in our Yiddishkeit, especially after the heights that we had in Tishrei. No holiday, if we can go and harness that, be able to go and see in some ways that contrast should be in some ways forcing us to go and think differently, that actually it's bitter that we don't have a holiday in Cheshvan, not just that we're on autopilot, get ourselves out of the rut, be able to go and think differently. But in Mar Cheshvan, we have to go work overtime to make that happen. And so that's why in some ways the onus is on us. The Mar is there, that we have to go and be able to force ourselves to go and get stronger from that month. And so we go and take it. Let me just give you an example from COVID of how I would go and operate. I don't have the time to get into the details on each of these, but we go and take a look at how we would go and operate pre-corona on several of these dimensions. The first word of the morning, Modeh. We go and see about being at Minyan, how I was forced to go and I used to be fanatical about it, and I would go and be forced to not be getting into Minyan, and then at Minyan, how we go and rush through, and how we wouldn't go and have kavanah as much as we should. Now in COVID, we're a lot more kavanah, thanking Hashem when we take a deep breath, the first word of the day, and say thank you to Hashem that our lungs are functioning well, where we can go slower, have much more kavanah when it comes to how we're going and doing Minyan and things like that. What we can go and see is if we were operating back pre-corona and we just went post-corona and did the same thing, rushing through Minyan, not having the same kavanah, and just slipping away in terms of the first word of the day, of mumbling it away, we will have lost this opportunity to get stronger from this setback that we've had. But I'm very much deeply hoping is that across these two models, I will be able to go personally architect a new model that is going to be a strengthening one, that's going to take the best of what we've had to go and do the last few months, merge it together with what we had before, and in that sense, be able to go and turn Corona into a Gamzula Tova. In the same way that we can go and see that we should go and have all of the ways that our daily lives, our learning, our family, our relationships all get stronger from the setbacks, same way that we should be going and seeing the Corona lens as being turning, that we can go and partner with Hashem to go and be turning this into Gamzula Tova also. So a lot of times we were hoping that life would be a very smooth road, that success would be ours as we're going down whatever path we were on. Instead, and we've seen it firsthand as a world, how it's turned into very much, it's the roller coaster of life, all the ups and downs that we have. If we can go and harness not just the ups to be able to go and be able to get better, but also the downs to have that be a strengthening, that's where we can go and become a shutaf, a partner with Hashem, and be able to go and get stronger from all that we've gone through, and also the daily things that we go through, the learning we can do, the signal that Hashem sent to us, the day that Corona was going and starting within the Frum community, being able to go and harness all the things that we've seen from our Masorah and from the entrepreneurial mindset, to be able to go and scale, hopefully, to the tops of the mountains together, where we can go and share that kind of an experience, to go and celebrate and be able to go and get stronger from all of these experiences that we've had. So thank you so much, everyone, for being able to go and help along. Thank you, Joe, Chaim, and everyone else, Alicia, for going and contributing to the dialogue. Harder to do it than when it's in person. Hopefully we'll be zocha to be able to go and do the next of our lunch and learns, be able to go and do it together in the Gluck classroom, the Gluck share room that you see behind me. And let's go and be able to go and use this as a way to go and adjust our mindset and be able to go and take that reflex and get stronger from it. So thank you all for coming aboard at Slacha Rabba as we go and start Kislev and be able to go and have the heights of Hanukkah and bring light to the world together.
Amen. Thank you so much, Dean Wasserman. That was really fantastic. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we wish you a Chodesh Tov. Have a wonderful day.
Okay, thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.